right, so I want to welcome everybody to Schenectady, where the sun always shines. So, if you haven't been here in a while, and it's sunny for you, that's because it always shines in Schenectady. Anyway, so happy that you're here. I'm Rick DeRico, I'm the Managing Director of the NYBizLab. So we have a few firsts. I always like to have firsts. There's just something special about having a first. So here's some few firsts that I wanted to share with you. For the first time, we have the room set up like this. Do you like it like this? Something different? Trying something a little different? Kind of nodding over there, very enthusiastic nod over there. I appreciate that. This is the first time I'm wearing this suit. So I have a lot of suits I overwore for too long, and so finally my wife's like, we're going to get you used to suits. So this is the first. Is this okay too? This work? I'm not as enthusiastic of a shake over there, but that's okay. So this is the first event of our third year, and that's a little bit of a stretch. And is there anybody here who's here for the first time? All right, I love it. So I love the people who are returners. That's awesome. You're part of the ecosystem, and I love the fact that people feel comfortable to bring friends and colleagues. So thank you so much. It's my pleasure to announce our meal sponsor today is Steadfast IT and Craig Skevington. Where's Craig? Craig Skevington right here, serial entrepreneur. He's also a former, thank you. So Craig is a serial entrepreneur. He's also a former BizLab Clarkson speaker, and he was awesome. Also a PhD, like our current speaker. I do not like interviewing PhDs. It's very intimidating. But anyway, Steadfast IT is an IT company based in Saratoga Springs, and it says basically that their response time is 8 minutes compared to the industry standard of about 5.5 to 6 hours. But if you see Craig today, I think it's going to be closer to 8 seconds. So if you want some response time, talk to Craig today. Craig is awesome. He's a huge supporter of the entrepreneurship ecosystem we have in the Capital Region. I'd also like to thank our videographer, Richard Lynn. Richard, raise your hand. We all know who you are because you're the guy next to the camera. He's with Agora Technologies. He's been he also helped us get our videos up on our new YouTube channel. So if you do a Google search on our YouTube channel, you can watch the past 3 events that we've had. But don't let that be a reason not to come to the events, because you can't network over YouTube. All right. And if you want to be a meal sponsor or a video sponsor, let me know afterward and we can talk about it. We have another who's who crowd here, but I want to highlight a few people today, especially. Cornerstone University. Can you guys raise your hands if you're from Cornerstone University? Samson, that's you. Kermit, you guys, yeah. Thank you, Andy. So, Josh. So, it's a new initiative with Matt Starkelly and Mike Sicosio with the City Mission, who's also a past speaker of the BizLab Clarkson Lunch. We've been doing it for the last 3 weeks, and it takes place in the conference room here, and it's just been an awesome experience with this class. So great to have Cornerstone University. And I also want to give a shout out, I'm sorry it's a little long, but the BizHub, people who are part of the BizLab community. So we have folks from Kirsch Helmets, Donnie and Craig, and we also have, I think I saw Hunter Moffitt from Trophy Case. And our advisors, Deb Best, HR Extraordinaire, Chris Wessel, Recruiting, Arkley Mastro, Anna Galliano, and Anthony Cove with the Wagner firm. So I just want to thank all of them. And if did I miss anybody from the BizLab community? All right, I don't want to offend anybody. And then lastly, I want to just share some housekeeping things. The restrooms are behind you, behind that exit door. If you need to use those, there's exits over here and over here. You may hear some business happening next door. That's a thing. We're happy about it. That's good. It means that they're going to pay the rent, so that's all good. If you're tweeting, please use the hashtag BizLabClarkson. Hashtag BizLabClarkson. And is Mel Chudzik there? I didn't see Mel, so I'm going to read Mel's notes. But I'm not going to say I'm Mel Chudzik. That would be stupid. This is our 20-second lunch. Once again, I want to thank Craig Skevington from Steadfast IT. And then lastly, I want to introduce our speaker. So you can come on down, grab a seat. This is Heidi Knoblauch. Give it up for Heidi. This is a very special day for Heidi because it is the day before she gets her 40 under 40 award. So that's pretty awesome. It's the last day that you're not a 40 under 40. That's kind of special. So anyway, Heidi received her PhD from Yale University. She's a faculty member at Bard College, and she's now the founder and owner of Plumb Oyster Bar and a tech startup, Receipt HQ. And I can't wait to hear how all that can go. So give it up again for Heidi. Very high tech. Yeah. Sorry, Richard. Really all right. Now, anybody who's been to these events in the past, you know that I like this to be a conversation. So I have a few questions. Actually, I have 15 questions, but I'm not going to get to them all. I'm okay with that. I would much rather have the questions come from you. So I'm going to just start off, but I'll look around, and if you have something, please, I should probably turn my chair around a little so I can see Matt. I don't want to miss Matt Kelly. Handsome fellow that he is. All right. So if you have any questions, please.
Yeah, all.
You know, kind of like a reunion. So
yeah, it's a little bit like
that. That's nice. So if you have a question, please feel free to just make eye contact with me, and I'll get you on it. So before we get to the nitty gritty, just tell us a little bit about yourself. You've got this PhD from Yale. As I said, I'm intimidated by that. But we talked on Monday for over an hour, and I'm like, she's just so full of life and just so many ideas, and just super fun to speak with. But tell me how you got from academia to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and with 15 questions, I have to tell you, PhDs normally aren't like, the shortest of answers. You got it, that's right. I won't.
How long was your dissertation, by the way?
350 pages.
That's it? Okay. No problem. We'll just get through half of it.
That's right. So the transition to academia, from academia to entrepreneurship is actually a lot smoother than I think a lot of people would think. There's actually a lot of similarities between academia and entrepreneurship. In academia, you kind of have to make, you have to find your niche. And in my case, it was making an intervention in the historiography of the history of science and medicine. So you have to kind of see what the landscape is, find your niche, and make something.
Niche, when you have a PhD, is niche. If you're like a blue collar guy.
We can go either way.
Or niche or something. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. So that same type of thing you have to do as an entrepreneur as well. You have to take an evaluation of the landscape and then find a way that you can contribute to the landscape. So you see entrepreneurial ventures that fail often when they don't take a view of the landscape. So you see that in pitches a lot, right? So if you ask someone in a pitch, who's your competition, they say no one, don't fund that person.
That was when I was a novice reporter. My first couple stories of the Business Review, I'd come back and my crusty editor, who's no longer my editor anymore, I was just kidding, but I would say, he goes, who's their competitors? And I would say, oh, they don't have any competitors. He looked at me like, an idiot, which I was. So, good point. So, in talking about landscape, even today, how early did you get here today?
So I got to actually, if you guys look at Plumb Oyster Graham's Instagram story, so what we did is we kind of took something that ACE, the Alliance for the Creative Economy, is trying to do to heart. And today I got here at about 9:30, and I started just walking around downtown Schenectady, and I was a tourist in a local city. So I went to a bunch of places that I hadn't gone before. I went to Puzzle. I've had like 4 cups of coffee now. So I went to Liza's, I went to Puzzles, I went to a cappuccino place.
Happy Cap?
Happy Cap, that's right, a breakfast place on J Street, and just kind of documented it on Plumb Oyster Bar.
So kind of getting the lay of the landscape.
That's right. That's right. I'd never been to, as I say in the first video, which is, it was the first time I did an Instagram story, so I had to call my general manager and say, Molly, I feel so old right now, but I have no idea how to do this. So she walked me through it, and the first one, a little too close to my face, but
it's a nice face.
That's right.
You wouldn't want this face too close, but that's nice. So would you say you still apply things from academia, from the skills you have? And you talked about just how you wrote your dissertation. It was just get your butt in the chair and just get the work done.
Well, you can't. There's nothing that will ever replace the time that you think about things and the time that you spend on things. That is the one thing that you can never get more of, and if you don't spend time on something, it's just not going to get done. So the way that I wrote my dissertation is I said, okay, listen, I'm going to have 5 chapters. What's the #1 impact journal in my field? Okay, the Bulletin from the History of Medicine. Each of those journal articles is a max of 10,000 words. Okay, so I have to write 10,000 words a chapter. This is how many days I want to get a chapter done, and I just plotted it out and just literally sat there and wrote that amount of words. There were some nights that were awful because I just didn't get up until it was done, and then just took 2 weeks to revise each chapter.
Excellent. So you said something that was kind of interesting in our conversation about how there, in some ways, there's more freedom to do certain things in the capital region than in a big city like New York City. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So I will say that in the capital region, one, I think it's an incredibly supportive entrepreneurial community. You have kind of all the support in the world to start new ventures. I mean, even think about downtown Troy. You've got the bid, Kate Hammond is here. You've got Dylan from the city of Troy. You've got 2 people from Rensselaer County who are here. It's an incredibly supportive environment. But in addition to that, if you open a restaurant in New York City, you know, you have to invest your money up front because you're going to get 10,000 people in your door that first week, and if they all write a bad review, no one's ever coming back. And so we kind of I took a lean startup model to Plumb. I don't have any investors in Plumb. And so it was 2 loans and any money that I had. So like our first tables were, I don't know if anyone was at Plumb like the first couple
Was
weeks.
anybody there?
First couple weeks we were open?
All right.
Good. It was an utter disaster. Like just, things could not have gone.
Give me like one, the reporter we still watch know like the name.
So the first day of our soft opening, I thought that we were going to serve oysters on a flat black slate. Do you know what oysters do ultimately? They sure do. We use those for our cheese boards now. But, you know, we had folding tables that I bought that were, I think they were $25 each, something like that. And so we just invested back in as we were going. You can't do that in a big city. You have to invest up front.
Why oysters, by the way? How did you come up with that idea?
So I'll give you the 2 answers. The one is very practical and the one is like, you know, pie in the sky. When I lived in Brooklyn for a while. My wife was an attorney at Davis Polk, and so she's a commercial litigator. And she and I would go out to dates and get dollar oysters, so super cute. We fell in love over oysters, you know, like very adorable. And oysters are a lot like wine, because oysters taste completely different depending on where they're farmed. So you can instantly taste the difference between an East Coast and a West Coast oyster, and I could even taste the difference between like a Prince Edward Island oyster and like a Massachusetts oyster. Wow. Absolutely. And so they're the
oyster connoisseur.
That's right. They're the only food that tastes like what it consumes. So like the example that I always use is you could eat a grass-fed burger, but you don't know if that cow ate grass in Iowa or Wyoming. But when you eat an oyster, you know exactly where it was grown. And so that part of like, I just got obsessed with learning that stuff, right? So, and teaching that stuff. And then the other market stories, there were people serving oysters in downtown Troy. So I did, my due diligence with market research. So really simple stuff like Google keywords, who's looking for oysters, where are they looking for oysters around, whatever. And there was a place that was serving oysters only one night a week. So I went over there every night of the week for 2 weeks. There are a lot more people here when they're serving oysters. So I opened up right across the street from them.
Very good. Awesome. It's a good break point there. Anybody have any questions? Are there any? All right. Let's talk about your background. Growing up. You grew up where? How many siblings? Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, absolutely. I have 2 younger siblings. One's 8 years younger than me, and one is only 18 months younger than me. We grew up all over upstate New York, and that's in part because my middle sister, so we're only 18 months apart, she has autism. And the type of autism that she has, she wouldn't have been able to participate in a public school education had it not been for my mom, who was so we were in Albany, we moved to Cooperstown. My parents thought we were going to live in Cooperstown forever. Julie was diagnosed with autism, and my mom, I'm going to tell this story really quick about my mom. It's my favorite story about my mom. So my mom is a goody two-shoes. Doesn't tell a lie, very all that. She's a doctor, great person, and when Julie was diagnosed with autism, she went to the Cooperstown Public Library. This is Julie was born in 87. She was probably diagnosed in 1990. She took out books on autism And it was all the refrigerator mother theory. So all of these books were saying that it's because you neglected your child early, and she stole them from the library.
Seems like a massive fine right now.
That's right. And so after Cooperstown, we moved to Syracuse because there's a school there called Juonio, and that school is a school for kids with disabilities and without. And so I always tell people that's the best education that I ever received. So Yale PhD is nothing on being 5 years old and playing basketball with someone in a wheelchair. That's where I first learned American Sign Language, where I minored in that at the University of Rochester later, but that was a great thing. And so, you know, Julie lives 5 blocks away from me with my mom. And it's part of the reason, one of the things that I'm hoping that we do in Troy, in Schenectady, in the capital region, is that we start to invest in companies that have an eye towards not only employing people with disabilities, but also creating products like artificial intelligence products that allow you to do stuff when you still have a disability. So, or anything like that, like something that's almost a reward system, something like that. So.
Does anybody have any ideas in that vein? He's probably a good person to talk to because he gets things done, makes things happen. That's a really moving story. So you had the entrepreneurial bent even as a kid. I love this story. This is a great story. Tell me a little bit about Warheads and Pixie Sticks.
This might be worse than the Oyster story. So when I was a kid, I always had kind of that entrepreneurial thing. I was always doing something, and so does anybody remember Warheads?
Candy?
Yeah, the candy. Yeah. So. Warheads come in a package, but they're individually wrapped inside that package. So when I was growing up from 4th grade, 7th grade, I lived off of exit 11, and at the time, it's built up now, but at the time there was only one Stewart's that anyone could walk to. It was about a mile away from the bus stop.
That's changed probably by now. It's probably 3 Stewart's.
That's right. That's right. Well, they've moved across the street. But, so I went to the Warheads and used all my birthday money and bought them out of Warheads, or the Stewart's and bought them out of Warheads.
You cornered the market.
That's right.
Before you knew
So
the expression.
I depleted the supply, and then I opened the package and sold them individually on the back of the bus for whatever. Same thing with Pixie Sticks. So if you went to the dollar store at the time, you could buy 100 Pixie Sticks for $1, and I sold for 10 cents each.
Is that how you funded Yale?
I did put it in a Roth IRA later.
I don't think she's kidding.
No.
You moved your hand. This is like an auctioneer.
Not yet.
All right, not yet. Nope. All right. So you mentioned something about critical thinking and how you do miss a little bit of the critical thinking that you feel like you don't see that so much in the entrepreneurial world as you do in academia. Tell me about that.
So I think you see some, let's call them ex-academics. The hashtag that goes around in the academic community is alt-ac, so alternative academics. So you see some of them kind of railing against academia. That's not my position at all. I really enjoy academia. There are a couple things that I didn't like about it, but one of the things that I really missed that I loved about it was that academia gives you the space to critically think about things. It gives you the time to do that. So that is a lesson that I've absolutely taken with me on this entrepreneurial journey. I'll give you an example. So Receipt HQ, which I don't know how much we'll talk about today, but so this company, it's very different than a restaurant, very investable company. And some people have asked me if they can invest, and I've said, no, I need to think about that. But
is that playing hard to get?
No, it's really, I have to, it's...
You probably want to invest even more after you say that.
I don't know what their psychology is, but it's truly you have to take the time to think about that stuff. Or another example, so how many people process credit cards in their business here? Okay, so processing credit cards, very intense process to acquire someone who's going to process your credit cards and then have a gateway and all of these things. So there's a negotiation process. So before I took 3 months to start Plumb, Oyster, from idea to inception, which a little intense. Because I was sort of a late starter model, so I was like, yeah, I'll just open the door, I'm sure it'll be fine.
Get some slate plates.
Yeah, get some slate plates. I just put a couple of tables up, you know? I think I had like 16 bottles of alcohol when we opened the first day. We now have $16,000 of alcohol in our basement. But
that's probably not a good thing to tell the crowd.
Yeah, don't go stealing it. But so credit card processing, you have to learn about like what basis points are and all just a whole myriad of things. But what I did is I went to Quicken and I said, "What's your rate?" And they gave me their rate. And then I went to 5 other companies and I said, "Can you beat this rate?" And I can't even imagine how much money it has saved me over time. I can't even fathom that. And it's literally just from thinking about this one process in your business that I never have to think about again because I have a contract.
I also thought it was interesting, you talked about like the cube, you know, the cube you can plug into your phone. You spent time before you decided like, we're not gonna do that.
No, I mean Square, I actually never, yeah, and I never was in discussions with Square, but my impression of most of Square is that they charge a flat rate. So they charge like 2.7% for anything, whether it's a debit card or a credit card. So I just did a lot of research, and people in the capital region mostly pay with debit cards. And that's only a 0.1% or something like that, because it's because you're not taking as much risk. And so I was like, well, why am I paying 2.7% for a debit card transaction? I didn't investigate Square too much. People use Square because it's kind of an all-in-one, so you have your employee stuff on there, but that employee stuff isn't actually verified in the same way that it is by other payroll companies, so that's not good either.
I just like the idea that you take a step back. It seems like you're not going to get rushed into things, except for starting a business. But besides that,
Yeah, right.
you were leading that.
Right.
That was not someone pushing you into something. Okay. Yes. Question to this.
Heidi.
Hi. How are
Nice to
you?
see again. Good. So can you talk a little bit about the decision-making process? Like we kind of just made that jump from academia, you're doing well, you're in Brooklyn, and all of a sudden, months later, you're opening a bar. What factors were in that life decision? And like, you know, what discussions do you have with your wife? Like, how did you come up with like, I'm going to change the entire trajectory of my life?
So I know your wife works at Emma Willard, so I'm going to tell you a story about how I went to Emma Willard. So there are, and this, I don't know what you call it, whether it's fate or, I don't know kind of what ethereal force is in the universe. But whatever it is, I have a little bit of that. So when there have been turning points in my life where I just make the decision. So I'm going to tell you the story about how I applied to Emma Willard. I was 13. I was 13 and I knew my babysitter's daughter went to Emma Willard. And I remember dialing on to the internet because it was, you know, AOL, like with a CD situation. And I went to the Emma Willard website and requested a paper application. And my parents were like, what are you doing? We can't send you to Emma Willard. What are you doing here? What are you doing? It comes in the mail, whatever. And I fill out this application.
So you listen to them. You fill out your
No, and I just say, just let me kind of go with this. And those moments in life where you kind of have that overwhelming feeling, like the first moment that I went onto the Emma Willard campus, I was like, this is what I need to do. I mean, that was a transformative educational experience for me, for sure. I think for anyone. But for me, I've kind of had those, I think I wouldn't say that I don't think I'm good at balancing that emotion when I feel it with reason, but I'm very, very good at making sure that that emotional drive has reason behind it. So I don't really know how to say that better, but with the restaurant and that decision, my third year of academia, I kind of knew that I didn't want to get the PhD. I think that's why I wrote the dissertation so quickly. The normal, I think people take like 8 to 9 years to graduate from the History of Science and Medicine program at Yale, and I did 5 because I just wanted to do it. Knew that well, I just wanted to complete it, if that makes sense, because I knew that I didn't want a tenure track position. And so the restaurant, though, the initial drive behind that was not at all rational. I would actually call it very irrational. There's it's actually the psychologist who's in the Elizabeth Holmes documentary, Theranos. I forget his name, he's great. But what he said is you don't want people to be all the time always thinking that they can't. You want people to overpromise to themselves sometimes, because that's how you accomplish great things. Like, who thinks I can go to the moon? Who thinks I should be president of the United States? That's not a rational thing to think. So I think that, yeah.
And that fits nicely with entrepreneurship, because don't they say, like, you have this overabundance of confidence based on no reality.
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. No, that's better said. So I think that being overconfident in that and over optimistic, with then not giving up when it doesn't become that thing that is, that I'm overconfident about, right? So like with the restaurant, I was like, oh, it's gonna be great. I'm just gonna open it. Like seriously, I genuinely.
Did you have anybody in your life that had a restaurant background?
No, before, kind of a little known fact, but I dropped out of college.
Really? I don't know if we would have let you be here today.
I know.
It's the Yale thing that comes.
I know. No, I dropped out of college, but
Really?
just for one, I thank myself a lot of times. So I took a year-long sabbatical from college and moved to New York. And there I started working in coffee shops and did a lot of stuff down there. And there was an opportunity for me to, at one point, purchase a coffee shop there. The rent on Bleecker Street was a mere $14,000 a month in 2007. But, so this is a good example of being overconfident, but not going into bad deals. So our attorney, he wanted to do a debt check on the business, and the owner wanted us to take on all the debt. And I pulled the deal 2 weeks before we were going to close.
Wow, awesome. So you have some exuberant optimism, but not to the ridiculous.
Depends who you ask.
I see a question in the way back.
Is there anything that you've been overzealous or overconfident about that you maybe failed at, and any lessons you learned from those?
Yeah.
So anything that she was did anyone hear the question? Something she was overzealous about, overconfident about, failed at, but learned lessons from. The pixie stick thing worked out okay, the warheads worked out okay.
No, I've definitely failed at a lot of things. I just don't know if they've been the things that have been overconfident about necessarily. I honestly, so just talking about the move to New York really quick. So I had this at the University of Rochester is where I went to undergrad, and so I actually went with the Skevington's daughter. We went to Emma Willard together and to the University of Rochester together. She's 2 years younger than me.
Did I mention that the Skevingtons are the IT sponsors?
And so at the University of Rochester, I studied history and public health, hence then later the history of science medicine. So I studied history and public health with a minor in American Sign Language. And I really thought that public health, and this is an example of how academia can sometimes not mesh with the real world. I really thought that public health was like Virchow and changing social determinants of health, like improving housing, improving food and all of these things. So I went to New York during that year and went to CUNY Hunter for community health education. And in my first couple days, I realized that is not what public health professionals were being taught. They were being taught how to make a brochure to make sure that someone wore a condom or stop smoking. So it was all individual behavior change. And I was very not about that, because I don't think that you can ask people to make these individual behavior changes without making these systemic changes. And so I was super disillusioned by that. I don't know if that's, so I failed at that. So I went back to the University of Rochester and was just like, made a big mistake. Please take me back, and then I took 6 classes a semester my senior year, had really no life whatsoever, but I graduated on time.
Wow. I think most people have. Anybody here ever changed their major? Okay, a lot of hands go up. I was one of the weird ones. I knew in 4th grade I wanted to be a journalist.
No.
That's bizarre.
That's.
So you have 25 employees, 25, 30? And so, you went from starting something to all of a sudden that's a pretty sizable workforce. So tell me a bit about your leadership style. What things maybe you've learned some things there that you wouldn't do again, or talk about maybe a bad hire without naming them.
Yeah.
It's going to be on ideal forever. But tell me a little bit about your leadership style, maybe some lessons learned as you grow, as you've grown.
So I'll tell you just a quick story that happened 2 days ago. So I was.
So this is your talk.
Yes.
Wow. Breaking news.
Thanks.
Breaking news, John. Yeah.
Breaking news.
These are the Gazette, by the way. John
Perfect.
Crowley.
Hi, John. I'm going to broaden this not to just employees, but just the capital region more broadly. Something that I've really struggled with here, and it's because I've been in a lot of environments where people are very motivated all the time. So Emma Willard, University of Rochester, Yale, New York City, like people in those places are very motivated all the time. And so in the capital region, not necessarily my employees solely, but other stuff that I do. Doesn't matter if it's a board or whatever. I find that people, when I say something, like if I was like, could you pass me that water? There's no impetus to do it if it's not like my hair is on fire. So I was at the restaurant the other day, and I said, hey, could you wash some white wine glasses? 15 minutes later, I had no white wine glasses and 3 white wine orders. And so I had to go back to the kitchen and I said, I really need these glasses. And they're like, oh, and then everybody gets anxious. And so I was like, how do I solve this problem? Because I'm increasing my blood pressure by,
Frustration.
whatever I'm doing, whether it's with the, whether it's a board of the Alumni Council of Emma Willard, or whether it's like for an event that I'm doing, or whether it's in my role in the city, me saying something calmly, like, hey, could you review that document? Never done. Until I'm like, we need to review that document or else everything's gonna die.
I was kind of thinking.
And so, listen to the strategy.
Sorry.
So maybe I'll employ it at the city too. And so so my strategy with the employees is I went on Amazon and I bought a cardboard Bruce Willis mask. Like a cardboard Bruce Willis mask.
Why Bruce Willis?
He was a white dude.
Okay.
And and I said, hey, listen. So I'm just trying to come up with strategies so that I'm not getting everybody riled up and myself riled up. So if I say to you, hey, could you pass me that glass of water?
You got the Bruce Willis.
Right. I said, just imagine that I'm Bruce Willis asking you to pass me that glass of water.
Wow.
And it works great, actually. And I bought my general manager a poop one.
How about like a President Trump, like, it's gonna be great, pass me the water, it's gonna be great.
I think there is a problem with, in the capital region, a lot of things, when you present them in a way that is your hair is on fire, in a negative way, they get done. And if you don't present them in a positive way, hey, let's plan this out, they don't get done. So do you want to hear all my 6 Ps?
Sure.
So these are...
Is there a test after, so I write these down?
No, so these are, I don't really read like a lot of business books, like I've read like The Lean Startup or whatever, but I'm not like a consumer of those, but, so I have some Ps though. So it's when you prepare, you prevent.
That's the first P.
Yeah, so when you prepare, you prevent.
Okay.
Okay?
Got it.
When you permit, you promote. And when you plan, you produce things.
Did you make that up?
I didn't make up the second one. The second one actually came from an EO event that I was invited to.
I love that. I'm stealing that.
Do it. I stole the
That's
second one, so.
That is really good. Well, I was going to say though, you're asking sort of a rhetorical, like, can you wash the glasses? Yes, I can wash the glasses. You know what I mean? You're not saying
Now you
like,
sound like my
wash.
wife. Now you sound like an attorney.
Wash the stupid glasses, please.
That's right.
And I'm also thinking about Cornerstone University. Where's Matt? I lost Matt already. Talking about asking reverse questions, and he was talking a little bit about that in class the other day about answering a question with a question, with a thing going. All right. Any other questions, by the way? Craig, you gotta have a question for me. You've known her since she was in.
He hasn't actually.
Oh.
He hasn't. He
Just your
actually
daughter has
met.
known her. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Nothing like being put on the spot, though. PhD to PhD, would you like to ask a really smart question? Just dumb it down enough so we can all understand it.
There is one question that with a PhD, you're trained to research.
Yeah.
You're not trained to do.
Right.
How did you find that transition?
Nice.
So So actually, very similar to, so I was at an event, actually Craig and I met at an artificial intelligence event up in Saratoga, and he told this story about how early on in his career he was working on self-driving vehicles. And so it's actually very similar to that experience, right? So you're trained in academia to research, and especially in history of science and medicine, criticize, hypothesize, all of these things. But for me, it was actually the moment of the dissertation where I switched to doing. And I don't think that's for everyone. I think in humanities, it kind of is. So I said, I need to get this done. And there is nothing that will get this done that is not just me sitting in front of a computer. I can't dream it up.
You can allocate it to somebody else.
No, you can't. You just have to do it. And so because I was so motivated to finish, because I was demotivated in the world of academia, so I was motivated to finish so I could get out of academia, finished quickly.
Saw a hand back there. You still have a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So mine's about food and
Yes.
about oysters.
Yes.
So I know the difference. I mean, I don't really eat oysters, but I'm curious about the difference between Prince Edward Island oysters versus East Coast, West Coast. Like, could you speak a little bit about that?
Absolutely.
Do you have a different oyster every day? Like today it's Prince Edward, today it's like how do you?
Absolutely. So the biggest difference is between East Coast and West Coast. So Pacific water and Atlantic water. So East Coast oysters are very briny. So it's kind of what we think of as an oyster. So they've got that brine to them, a lot of salt. Oysters actually consume salt, so the larger an oyster is, typically the more salt it's consumed. So that's why like Virginia oysters in the Chesapeake are larger. But West Coast oysters, they almost taste like a melon. They taste sweet, and they're plumper oftentimes. And that's a
More laid back too, I think.
And it's actually a technique that they use often on the West Coast. They use it sometimes on the East Coast too, called tumbling. So oysters aren't caught. So actually, this is a funny story, really quick side note. So I've learned a lot about oysters, but when we were first opening, there were Cisco reps that kept coming in, and they kept telling me, oh, we give you a QR code for where your oysters are caught. And I was like, oysters are farmed. They're not caught. What do you mean they're caught? You know what I mean? What are you talking about? You actually don't know anything about oysters anyway. So we don't use Cisco photos. All oysters are farmed for the most part, and they're farmed in cages, and you can tumble them, and that creates a deeper shell. So West Coast oysters typically have that, and they're grown for a longer period of time. And so that's the biggest difference, but something from like a Prince Edward Island, which is a East Coast, northern, very cold water, it's like smoother than, and the farther south you go, you often get like more salty brines, like that Massachusetts oyster, like a Wellfleet or something, will be really salty. And then in terms of, we get oysters every day. We set, like on a Saturday night, we sell like 600 oysters or something like that, 600, 700 oysters. On a Tuesday, it's like half of that. That's often because we do dollar oysters, and so we do that. Anytime that you're at a place that does dollar oysters that isn't a Virginia oyster, they're using that as a way to get people in the door, because an oyster costs like 89 cents, so by the time you wash it and all the labor and everything, you're not making your money back, right? So dollar oysters are very much like a thing, but it's really just you're breaking even. But we do it because we want to get new, fresh, cool oysters in. We have the smallest amount of oysters we'll have on a start of any given day is 4. The largest, we've had 7 at a time. Different types.
Great. Receipt HQ. I want to get to that, and then I'll get to Tyler, and then we'll come back down here. Tell me a little bit about how that came about, where it stands, and then you also said you might have some news. But go ahead. So tell me about Receipt HQ. What did it do?
So Receipt HQ, it's actually a very simple idea, and it stems from a problem that I had in a restaurant. So there's a tension in restaurants. So restaurants that are white tablecloth, and the definition of that is a restaurant that has a $50 or more check average. Oftentimes, it's very customary that they would give you a paper receipt. So imagine that experience of being at a business lunch and you grab the receipt off the table, or you had this nice date and look where you grab the receipt. So restaurants want to do this paper practice. The best example is Clark House Hospitality across the street from me. When you go and buy a coffee from them, you just sign on the pad. But when you go to Peck's Arcade, they give you a paper receipt. The problem is that credit card companies, in order to fight a chargeback, require that you keep that piece of paper for 18 months. And even worse, depending on what your point of sale system is, especially if you use something that doesn't protect you against certain liabilities, those receipts are often connected to a server. So like, let's say that Molly made X number of dollars in tips, and that's an employee record, and that's a 7-year time frame that you have to keep. So we got some National Science Foundation funding. Again, was just started with research. And I went out and National Science Foundation paid for me to go kind of around. So I went to like Asheville, North Carolina, tourist places. And I just asked them about the practice of how people are keeping their receipts. So like in airports, huge deal, because they need to keep these receipts somewhere, right? So the practice that almost universally everyone who has a paper receipt uses, they put it in a number 10 envelope, they write the date on the top, and they put it in a box and they put it somewhere. Either they give it to their accountant, a storage unit, Druthers has a storage unit. Is anybody here from Druthers for all their receipts? And so it can be a real problem for some restaurants. Capital Region, not so much. Our commercial square footage, $13 a square foot or whatever, $14 a square foot, not a big deal. Manhattan, big deal. Airports, big deal. So the solution, we had 14,000 receipts in 6 months, just to give you a sense. We're small, at the time we had 49 seats.
How much does that take up space-wise?
So, and yes, it takes up a lot of space. But the worst part is sometimes we gotta find the receipts.
Okay.
That's the worst part. So Receipt HQ was just kind of like, how do I solve this problem in my own business? So it's really simple. Instead of putting it in a number 10 envelope that you put in your basement, we give you a prepaid envelope, put the receipts in the prepaid envelope, you mail it to Associated Scanning firm, they FTP it up to our software that we created with Troy Webb. I see some representation. I would highly recommend using Troy Webb for anything like this, by the way. Just a little plug.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Can you be a sponsor next week?
So, we worked with Troy Webb to make this platform, and it's very simple. You can search by the last 4 of the credit card, and we're going to expand the database so that you can search by anything. Search table number. So these are kind of the expansion opportunities, right? Because in restaurants, often you don't know like why certain things are happening, right? So I'll give you an example. There might be 4 two-tops, right? And with Receipt HQ, you can see which one is underperforming. So then you can send out an email or a bot to your client and say, hey, is that table by a window or by a door? So in the winter, it's underperforming, and then it's all there. And so then all of a sudden, they're getting Facebook ads about vestibules and whatever. And so the white tablecloth restaurant industry in the United States is a $10 billion industry. So people are very interested in having that data as well.
Is this part of your announcement within that, or what do you?
So the thing that I was going to announce is not totally finalized yet.
You don't have to put it in this spot.
I'm not,
if
but
I were a reporter, I would keep pushing you.
Yeah.
Not on the other side.
You're an expert. Well, if I was a good marketer, what I would say is that you just have to follow us on Facebook.
And then we'll link to it.
That's right.
Okay. Tyler, you had a question.
Yeah, getting oysters fresh every day sounds like an interesting logistics problem. Can you talk about some of the challenges you had there and how you solved that with business processes?
Yeah, so that's a huge supply chain management issue. So supply chain management in restaurants, there are certain businesses that are tackling that for sure. For us, so we have 3 different oyster purveyors, and so because we're landlocked, it's often about the middleman. So you'll have food companies that drive, actually fish people, they're crazy in such a good way. So listen to this. They get to work at like 1 in the morning, they drive to Boston, and then they drive the fish or oysters back.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
I know. And so I had to learn about that culture for sure. So that was definitely a trying. There was one night that we ran out of oysters, and like at 8 p.m. on a weekend.
What'd you do? Call the Cisco guy?
I think I just like said I was sorry. People were pissed. You know, like people
Give
were
them like a
angry.
coupon to come back tomorrow?
Yeah, I think I was just, I mean, it was very early on, and it was just because we didn't anticipate how busy we were going to be. But it's also balancing those purveyors. So you can only get West Coast from some places, but we like to get oysters from farms that we know about, so then we want to use, it's a very, but the process is actually relatively simple. You make a call at the end of the night, 11 p.m., call someone, his name's Donnie. And you call him, yeah, and he has a voicemail. And you say, I want this, this, and this. And then he brings it to you.
This sounds a little shady. I'm sorry. Good job.
Actually, what's so funny, sorry, really quickly. So that the person who I mentioned, he works for Brickman, which merged with Driscoll's, but if any of you know food. But my chef, Eric, went to a food show of Brickman's yesterday, and he met Donnie in person for the first time. And he was like, it was like a celebrity. He was just like, he didn't look like what he thought he looked like.
That's hilarious. I have time for one more question. Unfortunately, I got to, because we're going to wrap it up. We always promise to get you guys out at 1 o'clock. But is there anything on this entrepreneurial journey that you wish you knew then that you know now?
I think that the biggest thing that I wish I knew, and this sounds very vague, but it's just like the essence of KPIs. So key performance indicators. So, and how to track them within your own business. So I didn't know how to do that from academia. I knew how to do it like in grants, but in a restaurant, the most exciting thing for me about going from academia to the restaurant is the restaurant's so fast paced. It's much more like instantly rewarding than academia. Like, I give you a beer, I take your money. Like, transaction, done.
No long-term.
You know, like that, and that's a very liberating feeling. But because things are going so quickly, to figure out what your KPIs are and how to track them as you're running the business is a very difficult thing to do.
That's awesome. I want to recommend a movie, by the way. It's Doris Day, who just passed away. I think it's called Something About Jane, and I think she supplies lobsters to restaurants.
Cool.
So look it up. I think you like Doris Day. Que sera. So let's give it up for Heidi Knoblauch. We talked to her all day, and we do have a lot more questions we can get to. So thank you so much. Again, I want to thank Craig Skevington and Steadfast IT for being our meal sponsor today. I also want to thank Richard Lynn and Agora Technologies for being our videographer. And it's my pleasure to announce our next speaker, which is June 20th, will be Toby Saunier, another PhD. So I don't know what we're doing here, but she's with First Playables, amazing person. She's just done amazing things, and she's very thoughtful, just like Heidi is. And it'll be a great conversation. So thanks again for coming, and have a great.
The final thing that I'll say is I would encourage you, for those of you who are not from Schenectady, who just came here today, I would encourage you to be a local tourist and go to one place before you go, and also just to visit the other cities in the area.
And if you want to see the BizLab, I will be around in 15 minutes. I'll give you a tour. Thanks again for coming.